Hey everyone, and welcome to another Sasquatch Theory podcast. In this video, we have Justin from Wyoming, and he wanted to share his Bigfoot encounters and experiences that took place near Yellowstone and the Missouri area. Justin has had multiple Bigfoot encounters like myself, and it does make me wonder if certain people are targeted by these creatures. You will often hear people say that they have hunted and camped all over North America, and they have never seen or heard anything in their life. When I check the comments and see people's feedback, you will often get people who say, I've lived in the Mark Twain National Forest or the Daniel Boone National Forest, whatever it may be, for 40 years, and I have never experienced anything. I think these creatures get spotted at the most random times, and they choose to reveal themselves to certain people for whatever reasons. You will hear the same type of activity with the paranormal, and people claim that no matter where they move to, these entities seem to follow them. Is Bigfoot paranormal or a shapeshifter? It's pretty strange they would need to hunt for food or find cover to survive. With the research I have done, it appears these beings are both. They are physical creatures that depend on the land to survive, and they have a supernatural side to them, and it's not something you can just listen to a podcast or hear a Native American talk about and simply just believe. You come to this conclusion when you get out in the field and do the research yourself. If you guys enjoy listening to Sasquatch Theory, please like and subscribe to the channel if possible. I also wanted to mention that you guys can now find these podcasts on Spotify, iHeartRadio, and Apple Podcasts if you guys want to follow the channel when you are not able to sit down and watch these videos. If you have a Bigfoot encounter that you would like to share with me here on the channel, please contact me at sasquatchtheory@outlook.com. Alright guys, with all that being said, let's dive into Justin's Bigfoot encounters from the state of Wyoming here on Sasquatch Theory. All right, Justin, welcome to Sasquatch Theory. How are you doing today?
Good. How are you, Miguel?
I'm doing excellent. Thank you so much for asking. Justin, if you would, tell us a little bit about yourself, where you're from, and your Bigfoot encounters and experiences from the very beginning, please.
Well, I grew up in central Wyoming. Moved around a little bit. From my teens on up, I've lived in Montana, a couple places up there, the Billings area, Red Lodge area. Lived in Missouri, the Springfield area. That's where I met my wife about 9 years ago. We had moved to Mesa, Arizona, then back up to Wyoming. I enjoy the outdoors. Just turned 50 recently. Love the fishing and exploring the outdoors, especially the mountainous areas. Enjoy looking at and watching wildlife. Got a lot of that going on here. Just God's creation, pretty much. Enjoy all of it, or try to at least.
Yeah, that is very cool. I enjoy the outdoors as well. What was your first Bigfoot encounter? When did you notice the activity? Kind of put me in your shoes and guide me through what happened.
About March of 1993, and I remember it as if it was just yesterday. It was south central Montana. Went fishing at a local pond, which is parallel to a river up there, well-known river. And the 3 years that I had already been living there, locals, people that I would meet, would say, never go down there by yourself and always be careful. There's something down there. They would just never say what it was because they didn't know exactly. But you get this weird feeling sometimes. You walk around the little paths that are down there, that you're being watched or you're being followed, real creepy feelings. And sometimes you just get the feeling not to go back in there, just stay on the side where there's hardly any trees or in the parking areas, and don't go exploring type of thing. Well, one morning I went down there and decided I want to go fishing. It was about 9 o'clock when I got there. Nobody else was there. And it was the back part of the pond. There's two areas where you could park, and I decided to go in back park and sat under this tree, and you could see the fish, and decided to go fishing. Well, there was a light sprinkle of rain, lasted a few minutes, didn't think too much of it. It was nice. I'm sitting there fishing, just caught a fish, and I'd heard some splashing coming off to my left across the pond. Didn't think too much of it. Thought it was some local dogs that were at this ranch house that was there. See them every now and then. They'd always make a ruckus. And didn't think too much of it. I heard the splashing again. Well, what the heck? So I looked up, and probably about 75, 80 yards from me, this huge, massive thing stood up out of the water, walked over to the shore, and it was covered in auburn hair. And I'm sitting there looking at it, thinking to myself, this can't be real. These things don't exist. The first thing that came to mind was Harry and the Hendersons. And I'm in shock. And I could make out the facial expression of the face pretty well. It was a brown colored face, flat, flat nose. You could see the conical shaped head, really massive. I remember this in height and width, and just barrel sized chest. And I'm getting nervous. I stand up. It stops. It made a few steps, stops, and looks right at me. I'm getting my stuff together, putting my stuff away. It takes about another 3 steps, stops, and looks right at me to its right. And I start to back up, and I'm watching this the whole time, thinking this thing can just come around over to this footbridge and just take me anytime it wants to. And sitting there watching it, and I'm backing up, and eventually just you could hear it going through the tree line, the stamping of the branches and the footfalls. It reminded me of hearing the Budweiser Clydesdales coming down the street out of parade. You could, I couldn't feel it, but you could hear the footfalls. And it finally faded off into the tree line. I'm headed back to the parking lot, which wasn't too far away, and this guy pulls up in a pickup, and I look at him. He gets out. I said, "Did you see that?" He said, "Yeah, I see those all the time." Kind of strange. Okay. And I left and went home and told my brother and told my folks and some friends and what I saw, and they're all BS, and they were giving me a hard time about it, and like, you didn't see that, and you're just making it up. Well, I finally convinced my brother and our friend that we had at the time, his name was Steve, to take me back down there, and I'll show them where I saw this thing. So we go back down there the next day. Now, mind you, Steve, he's about 6'5", really tall, skinny guy. We go down there, and I'm over where I was fishing, and I'm yelling across the pond where this thing was, and they walk over there, and I said, "Well, I walked under that tree right there." And I had Steve, I said, "Get up on that stump there and raise your hand. I'll show you how tall this thing was." He'd done just that, and he raised his hand, and I said, "Stop right there." I came back around, and we had measured it to be about 9 foot tall, probably about 5 foot at the shoulders. And the arms were longer than the waist. And the way it walked, it pick up its feet differently than what a person would. We had found some footprints, and we measured them to be 19 inches long and about 8 inches wide, and about 5 feet between each footstep. Just soft enough ground for them to leave the impressions. And everybody just kind of, my brother and our friends kind of just swallowed their pride. I said, "I told you this thing was real." I said, "I'm not coming back down there. I wouldn't return by myself whatsoever." It took me about a year before I'd even go back down there. And I tried sharing the story. Of course, most people didn't believe me, but I told them, I said, "That's what's down there." And it was a well-wooded area, and you had some wildlife down there, and you could tell this thing would be able to survive, and there was probably more of them, but that was the only time I saw one there. And never heard of any other stories from people that they just never knew what was in that area, but they knew it was creepy. Well, ended up moving out of Montana and came back up to Wyoming and to my hometown where I grew up. And along in the town is two rivers that join on the south side of town. Well wooded area for miles and miles and miles on end, going to the west and going to the south. And a lot of prairie, a lot of rolling hills, a lot of caves. And 1996, discovered these two new ponds, well, fairly new ponds. And me and my stepdad go fishing. And as well, we also have these two rivers and where they join. There was just one area on the north side of the river that I would just get nervous and wouldn't go any further, wouldn't discover anything else. And started to have memories of my Billings encounter, thinking, no, I just can't be, just can't be. But I was getting the same nauseating feeling that something was watching me. Well, we went fishing, my stepdad and I, and we come to this point, and I said, I don't feel comfortable going any further. He said, oh, it's all right. Don't worry about it. It's just all in your head. Well, we go down the embankment of the river, and probably about 8 or 10 foot slide down this hill and come to the bottom. And to my right was this huge hole that was dug out. And it stank really bad. It smelled like feces and rotting deer. And my stomach just turned upside down. And you could see these branches and leaves that were all matted down, and on the whole, several long black hairs matted up. I'm thinking, please don't let it be. Don't let it be. But there's no bears in the area. At the time, we didn't have no moose in the area. We do now. Every now and then you hear a story of a moose being around the area, but moose don't dig out holes and burrow in them. And it was big enough. I just hunched over and I climbed back into this thing a little bit, and like, ooh, it stunk, and I got out. And well, we proceeded to go down to the river, which wasn't too far away, and footprints in the mud. And I pointed them out, and my stepdad said, oh, don't worry about it. There's nothing there, and you're just misreading it and looking into it wrong. Well, he proceeded to go fishing at this river, and I proceeded to start looking across the river into the tree line, and saw something swaying from behind the tree, back and forth, probably about 50, 60 yards away. And it was solid black, huge, just like this other thing in Montana was. You could see the conical shaped head, wide at the shoulders, barrel chested, and it was holding the tree about shoulder height, and it was just swaying back and forth from side to side of the tree. And I pointed it out to my stepdad. I said, there it is. That's what's watching us. So he saw it. We both got out of there. We went back to the car and left. And I didn't have any other encounter there for a really long time. But you get nervous going down into this area where these ponds and this river was, these two rivers. So I had moved, got on with my life, had some stuff that happened. So I moved, and about 9 years ago, I met my wife in Springfield, Missouri. I went out there and uh, just start over with my life. Anyways, that's a different story. And you got the Little Sac River that runs close to there. You have a couple of lakes spotted, kind of scattered up there. And me and this preacher that I had met, he wanted to do a all guys, all kids fishing trip one summer. So we all piled in the church van and we went up to this lake and come to this T intersection, and we had the windows rolled down, and we had smelled this very bad, rotting, stinky smell that I remember. And the guy in the passenger seat, the first thing he said, because we were all sitting there talking about it and stinks, and the preacher's, he's saying, what can it be? And first thing that this guy in the passenger seat said was Bigfoot. And I said, I agree with you because I've smelled that before. And didn't think too much of it. And we went about our fishing trip. And I came back and I started to do some research on the internet. And lo and behold, there's sightings out at this lake area and along the river, this Little Sac River there. Well, flash forward a couple of years, and I had this fishing buddy. We decided that he wanted to go after some white bass at the spawning season, and we went out to the same lake, just different location, launched off his boat there, and went up the Little Sac River to go to this fishing spot. And coming under this old train trestle, you kind of go slow through there. You don't have to speed through there. Just enjoy the day in the outdoors. And I got really tense and felt like something was watching us. And just I just started scanning the tree line and didn't see nothing, but you could hear these grunts coming from behind these trees in 3 or 4 different locations, all bunched up. And my gut just sunk. Oh, please don't. Well, whatever it was didn't mess with us, but you knew that they were there. And I believe it was a group of Sasquatch. And my friend said, yeah, he goes through there and he gets nervous every time he goes through there. And went about our fishing journey, and coming back, same feeling, just a short little span of probably just a couple of minutes as you're going through there. And like, I couldn't wait to get out of there. We got out of there, that was fine. Well, this is where I really started to get into researching these beings and, listening to everybody that I could. But since then, I've about 5, 6 years, probably about 6 years of researching on the internet and trying to figure this out, what these things could be and why they do what they do and how they act and how they behave and how they interact with people, and hear stories of ones that aren't harmful and hear stories of ones that are harmful, and trying to narrow it down to certain people that I listen to, and came across your YouTube channel, and like, I like listening to the stories of other people. And same thing when I listened to Steve Ashdale at How to Hunt, listen to him reading people's stories, and very interesting how these things behave and the difference in them and the locations where they're found. And so just kind of try to take all this in, try to soak all this in and decipher for myself and put the pieces of the puzzle together. And going down this rabbit hole has just really changed my life. And from the very first one that I saw, like, makes you rethink about what's out there and what's real and what's not, what else there could be. And my wife and I, we moved from Springfield, Missouri. We got married out there and moved down to Mesa, Arizona, and hear stories of them being down there in the Superstition mountain range and the Mongolian Ridge. I forget how they pronounce that. I might have pronounced that wrong. But we didn't do any research down there. We didn't go looking for any, and just stayed to the city for the most part. Well, we decided to move back up here where I grew up at 4 years ago. And I was kind of anxious and kind of scared at the same time of going back to where I saw this second one with my stepdad. Well, I'll work up the nerve and, kind of get out of my mind that I'll be okay. And so we go down there, park, and tell my wife about all this stuff. Oh, whatever, nonsense, they're not real. Well, on our journey back to Wyoming, we had passed through the town of Buffalo, and come to this campground we wanted to stop at, and we didn't have an RV, so we couldn't stay. And off the side of the dirt road, you could see these huge X formations of these trees where the branches are broken off, and these trees are probably about 30 feet in length, and they made perfect X's standing up. And yeah, about waist high. Some of these other trees were broken right off, and these trees 10, 12 inches in diameter, maybe a little bit bigger. And you can see where they snapped right off. So I told her, I said, well, that's Sasquatch behavior from what I understand. People don't go around doing this. They can't. It's impossible. And I don't know of anybody that can. Maybe a super weightlifter could. I don't know. Well, get back to my hometown, and we eventually go down to these ponds, and I just get nervous, just nervous. But we do our thing. We go fishing, and nothing for the first several months. And uh, we had found out that there were more ponds that were added, man-made ponds, and that they were all stocked with fish. And so instead of turning off to go to these first two ponds, where there's three now, you continue on the road, turns into a dirt road, and takes you back to these other ponds, 9 in total. And come to the very end of the dirt road, and notice that there's paths that were made where people could walk, go exploring, take their dogs, whatever, bicycles, whatever. And I said, no, I'm not going to go down these paths. I just don't feel like it. Well, she says, my wife says, well, let's look more into this. Let's see what there is down here. So we decided to spend the night down there in our car. I wasn't about to go into a tent, have the windows cracked open, and it was nice out, summer. And started to get this feeling that there was something around watching us. I knew what it was, and I didn't say nothing. My wife, she replies later on that she too had the same feeling. And I told her, I said, well, that's Sasquatch. That's what they do. They make you nervous when you're near them. Just your sixth sense is kicking in. And there's mountain lions in the area. They don't make me feel that way. There's moose in the area. They don't make me feel that way. There's no bears, thankfully. Nothing else makes me feel like this. Well, there used to be some rancher who used to keep a small herd of cattle down there, probably about 50, 60 head of cattle, and kind of graze on the wild grass down there. And one night we're sitting down there in this spot, very end of this dirt road, and these about midnight they wake me up. These cattle are rushing past us, including the 4 bulls that were in the herd, and you got to go through these cement blocks to get to the path, and they're all squeezing through this one little area anxiously, and they're making a lot of noise, and they sounded like something had scared them. Well, back in the direction where the road bends, you could hear this one cow, and you could hear her calf, and you could hear the calf. It's really loud, and it was very nerve-wracking, very nervous to hear this, very scary. And you could literally hear this calf, the sound it was making, go in the opposite direction from this barbed wire fence, go in the opposite direction. But the mother cow was still there on the road. She couldn't get across the fence. And 3 or 4 minutes passed, and all of a sudden you didn't hear nothing from this calf, just dead silence. There were no bugs out there. You didn't hear nothing out there, just dead silence that night. And the mother cow, an hour later, she finally came up and caught up with the rest of the herd. Next day we went over there, and we didn't see no signs of anything, and we didn't go back in there looking. I was afraid of what we might have found, or what we could have found, and what could have done this. My guess, and I don't know because I have no proof, we have no night vision camera, so I couldn't tell. And to me, it seemed like one thing had scared the cattle, herded them up, and something else was going to ambush them. And these calves are about a year old, so something had caught this calf, picked it up, and carried it off. And there's only one thing that I could think of that could do that. And there was no drag marks, there was no blood anywhere near this barbed wire fence. We looked up and down this fence area and nothing. Well, as the next couple of summers had passed, spring, fall, summer, we noticed getting the nerve to walk back on some of these paths. There's days where, like, you can take a deep breath, there's nothing back there, but there's other days where just, something's watching you. There's days where you don't even go back there. It just scares the hell out of me. And I get to talking to other people, and they say same thing. And met a few people that they themselves have heard these things, these Sasquatch, or they have seen them. One guy walking his dog at another section of where this is, and he says, one day I was walking down there with my dog and I saw something black hunched over at the river, but he knew that it wasn't a bear. But it sat there, it didn't move. When he came back, it was gone. And I asked him, what do you think it was? He said, I don't know. And I kind of got into the Sasquatch idea, and he said, well, that would make sense because he's heard stories about them. Well, back in this original area where these ponds are, there's 3 or 4 different paths you could take and walk around back in there and start noticing some of these branches. Some of them as thick as my wrist or big as my arm, different heights, 4 or 5 feet off the ground, all the way up to 10, 12 feet off the ground, twisted and snapped off and just hanging there. See a lot of that. Started to notice uh, smaller trees, 6 to maybe 10 inches in diameter, laid up into other trees parallel, 10, 12 feet off the ground, sometimes even higher. I've seen 2X formations down there. My wife and I came across what we think is a den, all sorts of trees and branches bent in and twisted and kind of interlocked, interwoven. And there's 2 ways to get in and stick your head under there, and a good sized area for something to hide in and lay down. I don't know if anybody that's gone down there, and this thing is pretty tall. It's probably about 15 feet in height at the top and probably 8 to 10 feet in diameter from the inside. And I don't know anybody that can make that stuff, and you can't get any tractors or vehicles back in there. Just too small of an area, and there's all blocked off for prevention of vehicles from getting back into these areas. And we started noticing the tall grass. There's one area where it looked like 3 large, very large, 8, 9 foot in length, maybe longer, laid down in this grass, mashed it down. I stand there and I can't weigh this grass down the same way. It bends, but pops right back up. And this was laid down flat. And you can make out almost a figure in each of these 3 spots. Find footprints all the time, usually in the sand, sometimes in the mud. Sometimes you can make out the toes, the heels, and some of them ranging between 10 and 12 inches, some of them up to 16, 17 inches, several inches wide. And one day I decided to go on this other path. I was just by myself, and something was just drawing me back into this area. And I heard something parallel me. And I stopped, it stopped. the trees and shrubbery right there, and really couldn't tell. And I walked, and it would walk just perfectly with me, and I'd stop, I'd turn around with the other direction, and it did the same thing. I see this clearing, small clearing. I was able to bend over and look back in there, and all I saw was a pair of brown legs covered in hair, but not very much bigger than me, so it's probably about 6 foot tall, whatever it was. But no faces, no nothing like that. We would take random photos. I'd somehow or another, I think the photos, some of these photos are saved from my last phone. We were walking on this one path where this den was, and I could swear I seen a face looking back at us through some of the shrubbery. And it was very grotesque, and you can make out the eyes and the nose and the mouth, and it was hiding behind some of this shrubbery. I don't know what it's called. I gotta figure out what it's called. It's just really thick stuff, and it's got, some of it's got thorns on it, and you can't pass through it, but these things can with ease. We've heard rocks clacking. I've seen rocks stacked up down on the riverbed. There are deer, occasional elk, occasional moose, a lot of Canadian geese, beaver, skunks, rabbits, foxes, a lot of small game, fish, of course. So there's plenty of food source, trees, shrubbery. I don't know what else these things could be eating. You hear stories of them eating just about anything, seems like. I don't gift them. Afraid to get really close-up responses. And again, we don't have any kind of night vision camera or nothing like that, so we really can't go out there. Every now and then, we also hear whoops. I've heard them going back and forth between two of them from a distance. We've heard grunts. We've heard yelps. Different than what noises and what people or other animals can make. I know what these other animals sound like, and it's nothing like that. It's not elk, it's not moose, it's not foxes, it's not eagles. And again, another day, I was with my wife. I said, I'm just going to go down here on the riverbed and just go walking around. And there's where I first see these rocks stacked up, 5 or 6 rocks on this dead tree that was laid over, and 3 stacks of them. And there's people that go down there, so maybe another person done this. I don't know. I can't say for sure. I didn't see what done this, but it caught my attention and got a little curious, and come around this bend or cluster of these small trees, these saplings were, and I stopped and scanning ahead, and the river made an S shape, and I'm looking downstream, and on the left embankment, close to this path where my wife and I would walk up and down this path, seen 2 black figures, a large one and a smaller one, stooped over at the river, like scooping up water with its hand. And I knew what it was. And I'm in this tree, in these small trees, these saplings, didn't make a move, didn't make a sound. And this thing, what I assumed was an adult, looked right at me. They stood up and they walked over the embankment, and they were gone into this shrubbery. I walked up and around, and no trace of them, no smell, no nothing, no sound. I think they crawled down into this shrubbery, to be honest, to hide. We have found hair samples along this path. There's a barbed wire fence there. We found these long black hairs on this fence line a couple different times. Another barbed wire fence. It's only one strand, about less than knee high. Found black hairs on it as well. And just kind of makes you wonder what this is. The cattle are no longer there. They haven't been there for 2 years now. I know it's not cattle hair that we're finding. not dog hair. Some of these strands are up to 10 to 16 inches in length, and try to smell them, and there's no odor or nothing, so they've been out there for a while by the time that we find them. Get really nervous, and we've parked down at these main two ponds several times overnight, and there's where the sounds really began, mostly at nighttime. Occasional whoop, really loud, too long, drawn out. I've heard a scream down there one time. By the time that me and my stepdad saw my second one, one night we'd heard a loud scream coming from down there, deep, drawn out, almost sounded like a train horn type of sound. And I've heard these where people record these and they put them on YouTube, and same exact sound that other people are hearing from all across the country and other places in the world. And it just makes you nervous knowing that these things are down there. Well, last fall, there's another area about a mile and a half away where the paths are paved so people could ride their bikes easier, and parallels the river, tree line on both sides, and parking area where you can get out and decide which path you want to take, the one that goes north or the one that goes east. And the east one is what parallels the river. And I'm not expecting anything, and a lot of people down here, especially in the summer. A lot of dogs with people, and people bringing out their families, and kind of get to feel comfortable. And there's a separate path that makes a loop off the one that goes east and west. Takes probably about 100 yards to go around it, and there's some trees and some shrubbery in the middle there. And you can walk over to where the river is and walk back up and around and rejoin the main path. And I got out, I was walking one day and noticed a few limbs that were twisted, snapped off, and like, I wish I hadn't seen that. It says that they've been here when I don't know. And it seems like every spring we see new breaks, new something with trees. I sent you some photos, one where a tree was bent over. That was not there last fall. That happened sometime during the winter. Some of the breaks are new, and some of these tree stacks. There's one we've seen, this freaking tree, probably about 30, 40 feet in length, leaning back, shoved back into this other tree. And the branches are broken out, but you could still see some of the roots on the end of the tree that's up into this other tree. And what could tear a tree apart like that? I can only think of one thing, to be honest. And you know what I'm thinking, that's Sasquatch. Well, the other day we came back down here to where these two bike paths are, and I decided I was going to go out, and this is last fall, September, I think. I was going to go walk down this path that goes up and around, and I just got this don't enter, danger ahead feeling, and I just froze. And I turned right around and go back to our vehicle. We had a van at this time, and parking area, you could park probably about a dozen cars up here. We're parked there right now because we just love the area, the wildlife, and the nature part of it. And we get back in the driver's seat, and my wife's on her phone or something. She was doing something, and I'm sitting there talking to her, and my head's turned to the right, and out of my peripheral vision, down over this incline, I see something moving around down these shrubs, and lo and behold, we think it was a Sasquatch. It stood up, solid black, covered in long hair. Barely could make out the face. It was, I'm trying to think how far it was, 200 feet maybe. And you could just tell arms along. Yeah, probably about half a football field away, my wife said, about 50 yards, maybe more than that. Anyways, this thing stood up and it started to walk along on the other side of this path that goes in a circle, goes back around, and goes behind these trees and it comes back out in the opening and behind a couple more trees back out in this opening, and it's getting closer and possibly crosses the path. And I was able to make out that the arms were longer than the knees, and the way it walked, when it would make a step, it walked with a sway, like my wife said. As each step, the foot would come up, as if a person was jogging, as the foot would come up. But this thing was walking, and it had a good pace to it. It wasn't slow, it wasn't fast, a steady, good pace. And we're watching as it's making its way over to these other trees, and my wife wants to get out with binoculars to get a better look at this thing, and she can't believe what she's seen. I said, "That's a Bigfoot. That's a Sasquatch." And she barely closes her door, very lightly, very slightly. And that thing turned. It must have heard the door, and it picked up its pace, went into this tree line. By the time she got out, it was gone. Went down into this tree line. And while it was a big relief that it was gone, just don't know where it went. Yeah, my wife wasn't happy that she didn't get a better look at this thing. And I decided, I said, "You stay here. I'm going to walk down there and walk down there in the other direction, east, join up with this path where this thing came out of this shrubbery. And I'll have to take a picture of it and send it to you where this thing came out of." I'm on the phone with her. She said, "Stand between these trees." And I said, "Yeah, I've done this before. Stand over here where this thing walked past these trees." She said, "Yeah, stand there." And from what she could tell me, I was small. I was very, very small. My head even wouldn't come up to where its armpits were, where its shoulders were. And I'm 6 foot tall. Yeah, and she was just amazed. And the width and the thickness of this thing, just incredible. I've met Shaquille O'Neal. I've met Paul White, pro wrestler, goes by the name of Big Show. And these things dwarf those two. And they both are almost at 7 foot tall each. And as big as Paul White is, he is dwarfed by these things in thickness and in body size. And it looked closer than what it was, but it was really that far away, because each time we park and we look down there and somebody takes that path, you could just tell the difference between the size of a person. There's a lot of people. You get a lot of perspectives from different sizes of people to this thing. And this thing was just massive. If anything sticks out, massive, long black hair, the whole body covered. And you could see the conical shaped head. And just each time I see one of these things, it just takes me back to that very first one. But I've also done more research up here, and I've heard other stories. There was a story as well that was also on How to Hunt, where a guy encountered one in this nearby canyon. He saw one up on the ridge. It was black. The local natives described them as solid black. Talking to people, yeah, it was black. It was black. Except for the one I saw down there that had brown legs to it. So I don't know if that was a different type that moved into the area, or if that's how they start out, or they're just born that way. Like people, there's different colors of people. There's people, some are bald, some have hair, some are tall and skinny, some are short and heavy, some are stocky, some are bodybuilders, different types of people. And researching where I can, I think there are different types of Sasquatch out there in colors. Hear the stories of them up in Portlock, Alaska. Hear them in Devil's Canyon. Hear them out in the Sierra Nevadas, in Arizona, in Florida, in Missouri, and just they all look different for the most part, but they have a lot of similarities. Like people have similarities, and I personally, I love listening to a lot of people talking about this and getting other people's perspective. And I hope that we could help each other out. Trying to say what they are. I think there is a government cover up. You hear stories where people find a dead one or they shoot one, and all of a sudden there's government agents coming in and say, no, all it was a bear, and they give you a stern warning. If you do it again, you're going to go to prison, or if you talk about it, you're going to go to prison. Hear stories of even law enforcement and military. I have a friend up here who's a retired cop, um, and he said that his friend had saw one down by this local bridge. Off the record, he said. There's another guy. He owns him and his family I've known for years. Owns a local rock store, gem store, and he said back in the '70s he saw one about 10 miles out of town at this other bridge, crossing this field. It was solid black. At Ask Game Wardens, they say off the record, or they kind of just snicker at it, but you see them out of uniform, they're glad to talk about it, but don't record them. A lot of those stories too. Yeah, there's a deputy I've gotten to know a little bit. She said, yeah, there's something weird going on down there. And I asked her, I said, off the record, just as a person, not as a deputy, I said, you think it could be a Sasquatch? She kind of just nodded her head, yes, but she didn't say nothing. I said, because I've seen them down there. And she said, I believe it. And there's been reports back in the '70s of forced mutilations out here, cattle mutilations. Haven't heard nothing like that since. Um, yeah, we've been to Skinwalker Ranch and talked to some of the security guys out there and got their take on these things, and it just it's insane. It's just really insane. Oh, but that's where I was going to go with this. I personally, this is just me, and I don't mean to irritate or agitate anybody. I just don't believe in the ape theory. I think they are half human somehow. Uh, I believe DNA has been found and tested from all over the world over the last 30 years. That there is a trace of female human DNA in these things. The other half, nobody knows what it is until we could actually get a body found dead, or I don't want to say shot, but it could happen. There could be somebody out there that would shoot one and bring it to the table and have examiners look at it, zoologists and primologists and MEs, and yeah, there's no DNA out there that on the science books that can match this half DNA that these things are. Um, I just don't believe that they're a primate like an ape, like a gorilla. I think they're more human-like. I think they're more intelligent, smarter, and more advanced. They're methodical. They think before they act. Um, I just don't buy the ape theory myself. I appreciate those who do. I still listen to those people because they have other perspectives, like Dr. Meldrum. The prints, how he's able to tell the prints apart from human or primate. They're different. The hairs, how they're different than other animals, including human. I think it's insane. I just want to learn from others, and I wanted to share my experiences that these things do exist.
I appreciate you for sharing all that. Whenever you seen the Sasquatch in the pond, was it fully submerged in the water before it rose up?
I think it was because I heard some splashing, and when I turned around and saw it, I think it was at one time, but it was already about shoulders up out of the water by the time that I first saw it, when it was proceeding to stand up, and you could see the water just dripping off of it, coming off of it, including its head.
Yeah, so they have the ability to swim in the water.
I believe they do. I've heard of a few stories where they can submerge and go underwater, and I think that might be a way for them to get rid of their body odor. Maybe, I don't know. But yeah, I believe they could go underwater.
And how big was the conical shaped head? Like above the eyebrows to the very top.
Well, you could kind of make out the eyebrow ridge, and I'd have to say 8, maybe 10 inches. The whole head itself was well over a foot from top of the head to the chin, and almost as wide, but not quite. And maybe longer than that, maybe 14 inches. I had nothing to really compare the size of the face to, but it was just the head was just massive, and there was seemed like the neck was set down. There was no neck, but it was able to turn its head. So there's some kind of muscle format for them to turn their heads, but no neck like seen on a human or on a gorilla.
Yeah, and you said it was an auburn color. About how long was the hair?
All places like off of the arms and the back side is, and the legs is probably 10 inches. On the chest, it was a lot shorter. The head was a lot shorter. The face was bare. It didn't have the mustache and beard like the video of Patty. The face was just by itself. There was no hair on the face. I was able to make out the mouth, the flat nose. Uh, Barely could see the ear, the right ear. I knew it was a male because you could see that it was a male. Um, it just it scared the hell out of me.
Yeah, I can imagine. And you mentioned that it would take a few steps, look over at you, and then
Stop,
take a few more steps and do the same.
take about 3 steps, stop, look at me, done it 3 or 4 times before it finally faded off into the thicker tree line, and I was able to hear each footfall. That's how heavy this thing was. I think it might have been deliberately making itself known like that. Like some animals, like deer, will stomp their feet if they feel threatened or they want to fight. Elk will do the same thing. Badgers. I think it deliberately wanted me to hear its footfalls because there's times where I'm sure they get around people and you don't hear nothing. They're dead silent in their movements.
Yeah, and your brother and his friend went back to the area. You guys did a size comparison, and
Yeah,
you estimate the
make
creature to be about 9 feet tall, 5 feet
about nine.
wide.
Yes,
Yeah, that's a pretty big creature
and
right there.
you could see the muscle movements in its back, in its legs, and when it was swaying its arm, like the one that my wife and I saw last fall down here in my hometown. You could see the muscle movement in this thing, and it was all natural. There was nothing artificial about it. Um, like I said, it would put Shaquille O'Neal and the Big Show to shame in size comparison. The arms were thicker, bigger. Its arms were bigger than what my legs are um, in circumference. Um, it was just and impressive at the same time. Scary but impressive. Like, what are these things capable of really doing? I've heard stories where they could catch deer. And the video that's out there where this lady was turkey hunting in her blind and she saw two of them coming back with a deer crossed over its shoulder.
Did you guys find tracks whenever you went back to the area?
The one in Montana, yeah, we found tracks at this other location where these ponds are. We see tracks down there all the time. I got several photos. Try to. I have to learn to teach myself to start carrying a tape measure with me because I have to find something to put next to it to get a size comparison. Usually, my 11 and a half shoe is what I use for a size comparison, and I could put my foot in these tracks, and they're still massive. Even the smallest ones that are 14 inches are still massive. Um, but the one that we saw last fall, the ground is too solid. We didn't see any footprints at all. Yesterday we were walking around down there. and part part of the river, channel of the river comes along there and starting to dry out because it's not the main channel. And I'm looking wherever I can in the mud, seeing if I find any footprints. We didn't see none. And I figured that'd be the best place to find footprints, to be in the drying up portion of the river.
Yeah, and you mentioned there was another person by the pond where you seen the creature come out of the water, and he's seen it too. Is that correct?
Yeah, the guy that was pulling up that day in his pickup, I said, "Did you see that?" And the way he pulled up, he was facing that same direction, and he said, "Yeah, I see those all the time." And that really bothered me. Oh, after we saw the one last fall, my wife and I, it was about a week later, I decided to go down on this path and started to where it started. And I'm walking around. I told my wife, I said, "I'll be back in a few minutes." And I'm walking around, and it just comes up and around, like it's about 100 yards in total on the length of the path. And I got about halfway, and I started to get very nauseated, started to get real dizzy. And I, I mean, it could have been a medical thing because at the time I was low on potassium, but I think there was one that was close by because I could swear I saw a face from the tree line to my right looking back at me. And as soon as I saw it, that's when this incident happened. And my wife got the feeling that she needed to come out and find me. And she came up and around and she saw me. And I'm bracing myself up from falling over, hands on my legs, on my knees. And I told her what had happened. And she was able to catch me from falling completely over. And I was able to gather my wits and be able to stand back up. The dizzy phase faded over a couple of minutes, and the nauseating feeling kind of resided there for a few minutes, and we were able to get back to our vehicle. I think maybe one of these things, one of these beings, might have had something to do with that. And hearing the stories where they could make people lose time and forget where you're at and make you dizzy and blank out, um, something about them. I don't know what it is.
Yeah, you could have been
Everybody,
hit by infrasound.
yeah, exactly. An ultrasound that I just couldn't hear, and there's no electrical power lines nearby. There's um, nothing man-made down there except for the path itself.
Yeah, and that den that you found, that hole in the ground, do you think that was created by the Sasquatch?
Yes, very much so. It's just it's put together very well, and it just took some thought behind it, and the pure size of it. Like I said, I'll have to get some fresh photos of it and send them to you, and take a tape measure with me, and you could share that any way you want to, and I'll even one of us will stand next to the entrance, um, probably me because I'm 6 foot tall, and kind of get an idea how big this thing is. It just and it just you hear about them building shelters where they go in the winter. I think they stay here. I don't think these ones migrate because this friend that we used to have, long story there, um, 2 winters ago, he showed us a photo that he took of a set of footprints that went on. Oh my goodness, um, 90 yards or more in the snow, and you could tell that these are Sasquatch footprints because you can make out the toes. They were in a straight line. They weren't staggered like human footprints, and they had some distance in between them. You could tell there's a distance between them. And recognizing this, the surroundings there, the trees and stuff that surround it, you could tell that there was some size and distance to those footprints in the snow. And like I said, we found footprints in the mud, usually in the spring when things are thawing out and the ground's still soft in areas, or after a good rainstorm. So I personally think these ones stay here They're just scattered. Not too far from there, there's some hills with some caves. I just don't dare to venture up there because rattlesnakes and mountain lions. But we got a vantage point where we could sit there and watch these caves in this hillside, and each of us have seen black figures standing up there. And you kind of move along with the binoculars and come back, and the black figure would be gone, or it'd be bent over trying to hide behind a sagebrush, and just get that gut feeling that they're watching you at the same time, even from a distance like that where you could barely see them through a set of binoculars. You hear people with binoculars and telescopes and cameras and rifle scopes. They'll see one from a distance and can't barely see it with the naked eye, and then through the scope or the camera or whatever, they're looking right back at them. That's the sense that I got with that. I said, yeah, they're watching us too. They know we're here, but not close enough to make you nauseated or nervous. As there are some days that are just like that, though.
Yeah, and the creature that you saw swaying back and forth behind a tree, it was
Yeah, it was.
solid black with a conical shaped head. Why do you think it was swaying back and forth? Wouldn't it make more sense to hide and be still? That way it's not seen.
I I don't know. It was like it was checking us out. It was looking right at us, just slowly swaying back and forth. Um, don't know why. Maybe getting a different viewpoint of us. I don't know why it was swaying. It was just. I think it was just curious, just watching us. Uh, it could have sat still if it wanted to. I'm sure there's times where one of us or both of us be walking along some of these areas, and just how many are watching us. Um, don't know. I mean, they could be sitting dead still. I've seen where people have gotten photos of them where they're starting to put uh, leaves and branches and moss on their heads to try to maybe to camouflage themselves. I think they do a pretty well job if they already blend in with their surroundings. Um, they are the world hide and seek champions after all. Um, I don't know why it was swaying. I really don't know. I've thought about it, and I've heard other stories where others encounter where they're swaying as well, the ones that they see.
Yeah, it could have
I
been letting you know that it was there. It could be
think
like
that
this nervous trait
could
that
have
they
been
have to them.
could have been a juvenile or just had no really a lot of experience with people. There's been times where at these three ponds where we've parked down there at night, especially when had our van, we'd eventually fall asleep. I mean, it's hard to stay awake, and we'd have the side windows open. And there'd be a couple of times you could hear something walking around down there. Person, I don't know. People come and go in their vehicles all the time down there. Some people just go down there to hang out. Others go to barbecue. Some do night fishing. But whatever was walking around, there was no vehicle that approached us that came down there. Nothing that left. It just carried off in the distance. Still, there's enough light coming off the moon. Uh, some building lights down there because there's some businesses off in the distance. Like there's some storage units down there, and some trucking thing, and there's an auto repair that used to be down there. So you got some light off in the distance. And whatever it was staying on the dark side of the parking lot. It wasn't coming into the light, and just kind of just walking around. And it didn't get too close, but close enough I could hear it.
Yeah. And why do you think you've had so many encounters around ponds?
I think that's just where they live. That's where they habitat. It's just part of their area that they want to be in. It's part of nature. Hunting as well, water source, um, for a lot of different reasons. Um, they just like being around water. I mean, if you go camping out in the wilderness, you're going to want to find a water source and be close to it and less people. Well, some of these areas, there's quite a few people, but these things are still brazen to come out even during the day and possibly possibly to be seen. Why we saw this one last fall, especially the one I saw in Montana, the first one I saw was early morning, sprinkling out. Just got done sprinkling. Nobody else down there. It probably felt alone and comfortable, and I surprised it when it came up out of the water. The one that we saw last fall, even that looked our direction up in the parking lot. Yeah, there was a guy that already walked by. I forgot about that. Apologize. Guy already walked by on that path, and this thing knew that there was somebody out there, but not to move. As soon as that guy made his way down the path, this thing came out and started walking parallel to this path, the side path that came around in a circle. But as soon as my wife closed her door, the van door, very quietly, I could barely hear it. This thing looked right in our direction and it picked up its pace. It didn't stop moving, it just kept going.
Yeah, that is interesting. And you mentioned that whenever you go through certain areas, you have a feeling and you feel nervous, like your sixth sense kicks in. I think that's very true. I've gotten the feeling whenever the Sasquatch were around here and I'd hear activity, experience things, and sometimes have encounters. Like the hairs on the back of your neck will stand up
Yeah,
and you know something's there, but you can't figure it out.
yeah, your spidey senses go tingling on you really quick and just get that nervous feeling and like stop, don't go any further, or use caution when you do go and start listening. There's been days where you could hear the bugs out there, the birds out there, and if that feeling usually goes right along with a dead silence, no bugs, no birds, no nothing. It just dead silence, not even the buzzing of your ears. Just like yeah, turn around and go back the other way. It's like they're doing something and they don't want you around.
Yeah,
And
absolutely. And the cattle, the horses, dogs, they'll pick up on that real quick. And we have
yeah,
those same types of abilities.
yeah, there, like I said, there's a lot of people down here that walk their dogs in both areas, and I don't want to stay, but I'm just waiting for a dog to. They hardly ever put them on their leashes, and dogs get ahead of them. I'm waiting for a dog to start yelping and come running back at them, and something scares the dog, and or not come back at all, but they come running back at their owner, and I'm gonna get out and go up there. I'm gonna say, hey, your dog is sensing something dangerous up there. You might not want to go.
Yeah, very true. Do you believe the Sasquatch are following you around and perhaps there is some type of supernatural occurrence taking place?
I think there are, especially with the orbs that surround them. We've seen three white orbs over by these three ponds on the other south side of these ponds, and they're always three in a row. They're not flashlights, so there's just not one side of a light. These are glowing orbs, white. They look like they're pretty good sized, and always move from left to right from the tree line out into another tree line. And I think that has a connection with them. Like I said, I've been talking with, or chatting with uh, Ron Moorhead about this, and I think there is a supernatural aspect to it. My wife thinks as well, some kind of connection that they're interacting with the Sasquatch and vice versa. Like I said, I don't believe in the ape theory. I don't want to offend anybody, but this is just my personal belief. I believe they are the Nephilim, and that's how they're able to escape the global flood. That they opened up portals, like people talk about, people have seen. I know somebody caught a video or a photo of a Sasquatch coming out of a portal on Skinwalker Ranch there in Utah. Um, Footprints just stop mid, like there's no other footprints in a big opening, especially in a sandy or soft dirt area. We could see the footprints and just stop. This group, I forget their names. I haven't followed them in a while on YouTube. They're in Florida. They would see one or two footprints come out of nowhere, nothing before, nothing after. I personally believe, my wife personally believes that they could open up portals, or these orbs do, um, for them to disappear altogether. The cloaking thing, I think not so much. Maybe they can. I don't know. I've never seen one that gets cloaked. I've never seen a cloaked one before. Um, Possibly, or maybe it's one of these orbs taking another form uh, to make it look like it's a cloaked Sasquatch. I don't know. I don't have the answers to that. I've not witnessed anything like that. I don't videoed anything like that.
Maybe you have and you don't realize it, like when you're being paralleled in the woods. Maybe they're cloaked.
Maybe they are. I mean, there's always that possibility. I mean, it's open to any possibility.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, this is kind of an off the wall question, and I just want you to be honest. Have you ever seen a shadow person or like a gray alien, a UFO, anything like that in your life?
Um, Individually and together, my wife and I both have seen what would be described as a shadow person. We believe are fallen angels, rather known as demons. We've had paranormal experiences in our lives, growing up and together. Um, Several years ago, after we first met, first place we got together, we seen a winged creature just right along the ceiling of our apartment and just go from right to left and really fast. I've seen, and it was solid black, like a shadow. And I've seen a shadow figure standing at the front of my bed. I've seen one standing in the closet. I've seen them in the kitchen in the place I used to live at many years ago before I met my wife. I've seen them on the street corners, leaning sides, and I believe in possessions. I believe uh, the Bible where it talks about these fallen angels, and they're menacing, and they mean nothing good to people, and they seek to kill, steal, and destroy everything they can about humanity. And I believe that's what these orbs are. That's just my personal beliefs, that these are demons just in their true form, and they can manifest into human-like figures, some being small, some being very large. And we believing that the Sasquatch are the Nephilim, we believe that's the other half of the DNA that's missing. But nothing could prove it, because how can, on a shadow figure, how can you extract DNA from that? You can't. Oh yeah, here, I'll give you my DNA. You know, they're not going to oblige. And I think it'd be impossible physically to do such. But that's just me trying to rationalize and fill in the holes of the Swiss cheese.
Yeah, it's hard to say if it's all connected. I just ask because I've had a lot of Bigfoot encounters like yourself, but I've also had these strange supernatural or whatever you want to call it, demonic encounters with aliens, shadow
Mm-hmm.
people, and other
Mm-hmm.
strange things. But it's too difficult to say if there's a correlation between them and the Sasquatch.
Yeah,
But they do say that the giants in the ancient days had supernatural abilities.
yeah, and it does describe the Nephilim, when these fallen angels done whatever they done with human women. We can't figure that out because they're supernatural beings. That the offspring grew up to be large giants covered in hair. So we don't know. We don't. None of us were there, so we don't know. We can only speculate, and we got to be real careful about the whole speculating thing. It's just they could have possessed man, using their seed to do that with the women to create these offspring. I also like Ron Moorhead's theory on it, that they are something supernatural or paranormal that manipulated the DNA, just not in humans, but with other animals as well. And that's always a possibility.
Yeah, if it happened back then, then that means it's happening now, and it even
Exactly.
talks about that in the Bible that
Oh yeah.
after the days of Noah, these things will start to come back. And I mean, that's
And
kind of what we're seeing. How can we really deny that? And especially with the government opening up and saying that there are these
exactly,
UAPs and strange things
exactly.
going on.
And a lot of prophecies are being fulfilled, like with the Euphrates River drying up. Um, just a lot of stuff going on that you can't deny, that the third temple in Jerusalem is about to be built. The red heifers that haven't been around for 2,000 years are there now. that were found in Missouri that some rancher uh, sent over there, and it's just a lot of stuff that's going on. These Sasquatch are becoming more and more keen and prevalent, closer and closer to communities. Uh, there's where people see them coming up to their houses and looking through windows,
Hmm.
uh, following them in their cars, running alongside of them. Stories of dogmen slash werewolves. Um, there's a lot of stuff going on out there that how much of the ocean bottom have we discovered? I believe with video and photograph evidence, I believe the megalodon is still on Earth. Um, Stories of those reappearing. Just a lot of crazy stuff going on right now.
Yeah, I agree. And I think they would never tell us anything, but they can't control what's happening. And I think it's out of their control. So they're slowly letting out some information because they know it's only a matter of time till we know the truth, or at least the truth
Exactly,
exposes itself to us.
exactly, and I think that's where they step in every time somebody claims that they've found a body or a body part of a Sasquatch, or they've shot one accidentally or otherwise, and you know government steps in and they take the body and say, all you saw was a bear. Or um, after Mount St. Helens, the story I heard where those bodies washed up in the landslide, and some people found them and they told their local sheriff or whoever he was, and he made a call. Next thing you know, the army's coming in and they're collecting these bodies and sending them out on helicopters. If I personally found one, I wouldn't be calling law enforcement. I'd be calling up some friends and say, hey, let's pack this thing up and let's get it somewhere where the government can't find it, and be very quiet in who we tell, and get a group of people out here to examine it, quietly and privately.
Yeah, very true. I think eventually they would find out what's going on and try to take control of the situation. And it's
Yeah,
it's a frightening thing because governments want to control people, and that's
exactly.
exactly what they're doing by suppressing the information. They want to control us, but they know they don't have control, and they don't like that.
And you notice that United States, Canada, Australia, Great Britain, Germany, Russia, wherever these things are found, those governments are trying to take control of the situation. I wonder why.
Yeah, yeah. I'm worried about what's to come here in the near future, and I don't think it's
Yeah,
any good, but
no.
it's bound to happen anyways. So
Oh, yeah.
we'll see what transpires after these next events. The eclipse is supposed to happen here in a
Yeah.
couple days, and I think that will transpire into some strange activity in the world and
Good.
cataclysmic things that will take place.
It could. Never know. We'll see what happens.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, let's see. What else do we want to talk about? Have you had any other encounters you can think of? Any activity you
No.
want to talk about?
Um, One of the nights that we were parked down there at the end of the dirt road where these cattle would rush past us. It wasn't the same night. It was another night that sitting right next to one of the ponds there, and you could hear these about 1 o'clock, 1:30 in the morning. You could hear these big rocks that were being thrown in the water, big splashes, and several of them, or about 7 or 8 of them, just kerdunk, kerdunk. So it wasn't a beaver. I've heard beavers down there. It was, you could tell it was big rocks that were being thrown in the water. And I thought maybe that could have been related. Hear stories about them throwing rocks in the water. Thankfully, we've not had any rocks or anything thrown at us. Um, don't think I could handle something like that, a rock or a log being thrown at us. I haven't heard of any stories like that happening up here. You hear stories of people going camping in the area. There's mountains kind of to the south and to the west of us, and every now and then you hear people that go out camping and something will be walking around their campsite at night and pressing in on their tent and giving them a bad taste in their mouth that they want to get out of there first thing in the morning. The mountain ranges to the south of us. We went up. There's some cabins up there that church groups and groups could rent, and we went up there with a church group a couple summers ago. It was in August, and you could see the X formations up there. Uh, just trees, limbs are broken off, and where they're just stacked almost like in teepee positions, or snapped off limbs on some of the other trees. Um, so I think they're in that location as well. Um, like I said, I've only seen two X formations down here by the ponds.
What do you think the X formations are, these X structures?
I think they're either communicating with each other, saying, "Hey, this is our area. You stay on your side, we'll stay on our side," a boundary type of thing. Or maybe they think they're communicating with people like, "Stay away. This is our area. You stay there. We stay over here." I think it's just some type of communication. That's all. It's my personal beliefs.
Yeah, that makes sense to me. I kind of feel like they're boundary markers and they're
Yeah,
claiming their territory and warning people to
exactly.
stay out, possibly.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't think they like humans for the most part. I think they're curious about us, but I don't think they like us for the most part, and they just want us to stay away from them.
Yeah, I think so. A lot of these X structures are found around roads, parking lots, food plots, down in river bottoms, high up on hills, where their world meets ours.
Exactly, and just happens to be in nature, just no different than with deer or any other animals. And like I said, there's a lot of deer out here. Oh, in the area that we're in now, where these uh, two paths meet, these bike paths. There's been a couple times we get down here, and just as it starts getting dusk, there's four deer, whitetails. They'll come running from down where these trees are. They'll come up the side of this hill, and they'll go around the parking lot, and they'll jump this fence that's here, and they'll come back over where these there's some businesses back in here as well, and they'll come back in. They'll stay in the well lit areas. They don't stay down there in the dark areas at nighttime. I thought that was kind of odd too, because deer like to hide at night. They don't like to be seen. But these ones, they'll come up and they'll go closer to the lights, and they get away from where it's dark at down below here.
Yeah, that makes sense. And with the X structure, it could be like where, like I said, our world meets theirs, but where our
Yep,
paths cross at, like a
yep.
crossing or something, or
And
X
my wife
marks the spot.
exactly. My wife said there's possibly a connection between them and humans because it just something draws them to us, and it could be because possibly, not saying for sure, that they are part human in some way, the DNA, and they have a connection to us. So something draws them to us to begin with. Story after story, video after video I've seen. I'm sure you've seen your fair share of them. I remember this one I was watching where this dad and his family were out on this path walking, and he noticed that there was a Sasquatch watching his family. He had to stop and go pee or something, and he looked up the hillside and he saw one looking down at his family. So he got his family together and they left. They got out of the area. Um, People staying in cabins where they bang on cabins and throw rocks at cabins, and or your loggers or people out there that have to work with power lines. Um, they'll see one standing in the tree line watching them. Um, they're drawn to us, and I think that's something that we have as people need to figure out if we're going to go down this rabbit hole. Let's go down further and try to figure out why they're drawn to humans and why are humans drawn to them once you encounter one.
Yeah, that's a very good question. And you say you've spoken with Jeff Meldrum before. What did he have to say about your encounters?
I met him 2 years ago. We have an outdoor event coming up in this other community next month, I think. The community, the town is called Lander, He's going to be there, I think, the 14th and 15th, something like that. It's a outdoor expo, and I was really glad to see him. His display was awesome. He had foot cast, he had a fist cast, he had Patty up on the wall, how big she was, and I was just like talk talk to him, and I ended up talking to him. There's other people that talk to him as well. I'd wait till they get done. I continue my story, and he believes that there is something here in this area. I'll just mention it's the Wind River area. That's all I'm saying. It's a huge mountainous area. Um, that's about pinpoint as I could get. Um, he believes that there's something here. Um, I I got some hair samples I got to send to him anyways, so we got them bagged up.
So you did
And
keep the black hairs that you found on the fence?
we lost the first set. I don't know how we lost the first several hairs that we found, but we did find more and we kept those. So,
Mm,
and
yeah.
I'm we're going to be going back down there see if there's anything fresh from the spring that might have got snagged up on. I think the barbed wire fences are only to keep the cattle in certain areas that were down there, but the cattle aren't there no more. But the fences remain. I sent you a picture of one of the gates where the latch goes up and down, and it was bent completely back in both directions.
Yeah, that
And
is interesting.
I have no idea. I tried grabbing that, and I can't bend it back. Yeah, they're steel. I mean, unless somebody took the time out and took clamps and tools and mallets and done it themselves, I don't know. I don't know if you can even do it with the right set of tools, but it just again just adds to my idea that it was done by a Sasquatch.
Yeah, I need to get in touch with Jeff Meldrum. I have something interesting that I would like to get tested, and I think he would be the guy to do it.
That's good. What do you have, if I may ask?
Some possible blood.
Okay, no, that's cool. That's
Hmm.
what. Yeah, definitely get a hold of them, and
Yeah, and there's a whole backstory behind it too. It's not just random. Um,
I believe it. I believe it.
yeah, I've talked to Doug Hijack. I interviewed him, and he said if anyone has any evidence, send it in. And whenever I told him what I had, he kind of quit talking to me. So I was like, okay.
Yeah, just whatever you do, don't give it to your local university. That's for sure, or your local zoo. They'll keep it.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd like to find somebody who's serious about collecting evidence. You know, you hear a lot of people on TV say, if you got something, send it in so we can analyze it. But I think a lot of people just want to look like the big man on the block and
Yeah, I
not
wouldn't say
not walk the
to it.
walk.
Yeah, I would avoid the people that are on the TV shows just because. Not saying they're all bad. There's just some of them I personally wouldn't trust. I mean, but yeah, get a hold of Jeff Meldrum, and if he can't do it, I'm sure he knows somebody that can that be trustworthy.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. He possibly has a lot of connections. I remember watching a video on Monster Quest years ago where he was at a cabin in Canada and they had like this board with a bunch of nails and they think one stepped on those
Oh
screws.
yeah, I
Yeah.
remember that. That guy came back to his cabin in the spring, and he thought it was a bear that was breaking into his cabin, and he laid out a board of nails, and the
Hmm.
following spring, he had there's blood all over it, dry blood. Yeah,
Yeah, so I definitely think Jeff would be the guy to contact because he would at least know somebody who could run this blood sample and
yeah,
possibly
definitely.
analyze it.
They're not going to keep it for themselves and hide the results from you. They're going to tell you it's either this or that, or maybe it's nothing that's on the charts yet, and at
Yeah.
least get some some answers to it. Hopefully,
Yeah, and I have different samples too, hidden in different areas.
that's,
So if somebody
yeah,
takes one, I still have more.
no, that's good. That's a good idea.
Hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's just that's why we are when we find these share samples. We might share with somebody that we could trust that we have it, but we're not going to tell them where it's at, where we're keeping it. Because we don't want it to disappear.
Yeah, that tends to
Disappear.
happen a lot where they'll tell you it's nothing and they won't send it back to you, and
Yeah,
or it'll just disappear whenever you send it in. And they have no answer.
exactly.
Hmm.
Exactly. Again, part of that cover up.
Yeah, absolutely, and they do a good job at it. I do got to give them that. Very
And
professional at hiding the truth.
that's why I like Steve Ishmael so much because he says the way it is. He's a no BS guy, and he hates the bullies. He doesn't like the bullies, and he talks about how the governments are treating the people that encounter these beings. And he just wants to get the stories out there. He doesn't want the fame for it. He doesn't want no fortune. He's not out there to make a quick buck. And he doesn't change a person's stories because when he read my stories, I always shared two of them with him. He didn't change none of the stories, so he kept it exactly the way it was. So
Yeah, I heard the BFRO changes a lot of stories. I don't know if that's true, but
I've heard that where they do. I've heard where Matt Moneymaker changes stories. They make fun of people, or they get people to make up stories that they want a narrative to fit for some reason. Um,
yeah, I've talked to people who have sent me their encounters, and they say the encounter that was put up on the BFRO website was changed, altered, or just summarized.
yeah, I don't like those guys, to be honest.
Yeah, there's something fishy about it.
Yeah, there's others. I forget her name. There's another one. It's not. I don't think they're on Discovery. They're on, I think, different channel. A group of four of them. They go out, and she usually. I know she's a scientist. One of the guys, he's former military. They get some really good infrared footage of Sasquatch walking around, or uh, they'll take this device out there that's meant for game calls, and they'll play the Sasquatch calls, and they usually get replies. They're deep down in the forest somewhere where there's no other people, and I kind of want to do that. I've seen those devices; they're just really expensive. 180 bucks on up here at our local outdoor shop. But get once you get it, yeah, you can do stuff like that. But you just gotta be real careful, I guess, and what you play out there, and see what kind of see what kind of response you might get. But I don't know. I'm kind of on the fence about that one.
Yeah.
Um, I
What's
remember.
Oh, go ahead.
Huh? Go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say it's pretty interesting that they mentioned the Nephilim were global, like they were worldwide, and the activity you see from the North American Bigfoot, Sasquatch, is the exact same that you'll see in Asia, that you'll see in Australia, and
Mm,
that's not typical of animals. Like if you see
no.
a deer here in North America, it's going to be different than one that you see in Africa per se.
Oh yeah, or even in British Columbia,
hmm Unless
they
the
have their
land was
cat
connected at one point.
something. Yeah, something. That's what I was going to say. I remember watching the show up there on Portlock, and they had Ron Moorhead come in, and he played the audio sounds, and they started to get reply. And there's a point to come up. They said, "Well, what did you play?" He says, "I don't know, and I don't know what kind of response you're going to get because we don't know what they're really saying." He played. There might have been some whoops or something. I don't remember what it was. It wasn't the Sierra Sounds. He played something else out there, and they started to get responses. And so we got all these different recordings. And the friend that we used to have here, he said him and his son were sitting up on this ridge overlooking the river one night, and uh, it's kind of high, about 80 feet above the river. And but they could hear three somethings walking across the river, coming through the river. And there's a lot of shallow points out here. It's not all deep. There's some points where you and I could cross with ease, really shallow points, waist deep or even less. But they heard three somethings walking through, and he said they start talking, but he didn't understand what they were saying. Really deep voices and like almost like a chatter. And I'm sitting there, and I said, "Well," he says, it sounded almost like a different language. So I got on my phone. I played some whoops. I played something else. He said, "No, no." I played the Sierra sounds, and he said that's exactly what him and his son had heard. Same kind of talking. And I told that to Ron, and he was surprised that those sounds are coming from a different set of Sasquatch from a different time point in a different location. It's like these footprints that are being found. They're almost identical, regardless what time period they came from, where they were cast from all different points of the globe. and they're all coming back to be very similar in the patterns of the feet, and the hair samples are coming back similar. So yeah, there's something that's more to these beings than what I think we as humans have even discovered. There's so much to discover on these things that I think we're just barely touching the tip of the iceberg on them.
Yeah, it's certainly a large rabbit hole that never ends. And I do believe
Yeah.
there's a lot more to it, and we're only scratching the surface. Whenever you and your wife seen something about 200 feet away with long arms swaying back and forth, whenever she looked through the binoculars, did she get a good look at it?
She didn't get a chance. She was stepping out with the binoculars um, to look at without having to look through the front window because the front window was a little dirty at the time. It was a little dusty and whatnot. And she was just stepping out with the binoculars. She was going to raise the binoculars up, but when she went to, I wish she wouldn't have closed your door. Lesson learned: don't close your door. If you're going to open your door to look at something like this, don't close your door. Unless it's a bear, then close your door. Um, but at a distance like that, she still went to go shut the door, nice and quiet, and it hurt her from that distance away, and it just picked up its pace and left, and it went into this tree line. We couldn't see it after that; it was gone.
Yeah, and when you guys did a size comparison, it was a lot bigger than yourself, huh?
Oh yeah, way bigger. She said, "Oh, you're really small out there," and she was describing it the best way she could. And and I was on the phone with her, and yeah, it went up to these branches. It went up over here, and that's how tall it was. And it was it itself was almost maybe 9 feet tall as well. It's well over 7 foot tall. I don't think it was as 10. It's somewhere between 8 and 9 feet tall. I think it was 9 feet. My wife thinks it was bigger than that.
Mm.
And I mean, it could have been. Hey, excuse me, Harry. Can I measure how tall you are? Just stand there for a minute. You know,
Yeah, no doubt. And whenever you say it was a black color, was it jet black, like a coal
it was
black?
it was a jet black. It was a shiny black,
Yeah, that sounds like them for sure.
and that's you hear a lot of stories in the area, and that's what you get is that shiny black. From my friend that saw one back in the '70s to this retired cop's friend that saw one. This guy that saw something hunched down over at the river. The one that me and my stepdad saw, they're all jet black down here for some reason. Yeah, it wasn't a person wearing a coat or anything, and it wasn't human skin. And except for the one I saw that paralleled me when I was looking through the small trees, it was brown, and I don't understand why a brown one would be here with all these others, unless it's a different type that moved in, or maybe it was a juvenile. It wasn't huge compared to some of these black ones, and I don't know. I really, that's kind of throws a wrench into the whole system there. Why would there be a brown one? And it wasn't a bear. It was two-legged. It was bipedal, and I don't know.
Yeah, typically with the clan of Sasquatch, you'll get several black ones, several brown ones, and there'll be some gray and whitish ones, but you'll also have some that are like black with white in them and just different
Yeah,
variations.
yeah, and I've seen the videos of the juveniles. There's that one where those people come across a possible juvenile that's up in the tree, and I thought that was a pretty cool video. Um, or the one that's come running down the mountain there in California. I think it was Fourth of July several years ago, and they found out that it was a juvenile, but it was running so fast that they had that guy come in that could run really fast, and he even couldn't match the pace to it. Um, so yeah, we know they have young. Video where that the mother's picking up its infant from behind that boulder. It's walking from right to left. Um, Other videos of juveniles. These people are sticking their head in what they thought was a den, and they see a juvenile in there, and you barely catch a glimpse of it on the video, and you can hear this guy say, "Let's get out of here. Let's go right now." And it, like any other mother, I'm sure they would protect their young. Um, Heard a story the other day. can't remember what website I was on, where this guy was out deer hunting, and he saw this juvenile Sasquatch taking this deer and throwing this deer around, putting its foot on its head, and let it go and catch it again and do it all over again, tormenting this deer. And he was down in this crevice hiding, and he said he regretted it, and I probably would too, that he had shot this Sasquatch after doing this for about 15 minutes. And then he had heard the mother come barreling out of the tree line and letting out these screams and these yells and trying to pick up the dead offspring. Yeah, they're going to protect their young if they can, or protect each other. I think that's where there's, they call them sentries, I believe, where they got lookouts, and they'll try to distract you if there's another one off to the side somewhere. So they'll start making sounds, clicking sounds or whatever, and try to distract you to get away from the rest of the group or whatever. I believe they're very intelligent when it comes to stuff like that.
No, yeah, without a doubt, and I believe that 100%.
Like I said, we're always taking photos of stuff and seeing what's new every spring, and see what else. Keeping our eyes and ears open and our noses open. And that den and the one there in Missouri, the smell. The only 2 times I've ever encountered that smell, and it's identical. I've not encountered it anywhere else at any other time.
Yeah, well, they're certainly here.
Oh yeah, and I've only heard the one yell. It sounded like a train horn. Long bellowed out howl, and I've heard the whoops a few different times. The rock clacking only a couple of times. I've never heard any tree knocks. I've tried tree knocking and maybe get a response. Nope, nothing. I've never heard them day or at nighttime. So the ones here are very quiet. They don't make themselves too well known, I guess.
Yeah, that is interesting.
The whoops are either one at a time, or they're 3 really quick. The root, I've heard that a couple of times, back and forth between 2 of them. But outside of that, they're not too loud. They're not trying to be, I don't think.
Yeah, I don't think so. And maybe you'll hear some in the future, and possibly you'll have another major encounter in the future. And if that is the case, feel free to contact me sometime, and I'll have you back on the show.
Yeah. Definitely, and I got some photos of this stuff, but I might have to go back with the tape measure and retake some of the photos and send a couple of them to you and see what you think. Like the ones I sent you, and just that gate, that fence thing is just that's really got me baffled. It's got us all baffled up here. So
yeah, that metal handle was bent open.
Yeah, that's just freaking insane.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, Justin. Well, I appreciate you and your wife for taking the time to talk with me today and share your encounters and experiences here on Sasquatch Theory. That really means a lot to me.
Yeah, thank you very much, and I like your channel, what you're doing there, and getting the stories out there, and hopefully we could all help each other in some way. So
yeah, I hope so. And you definitely helped me out today. It's good to speak with somebody who's had multiple encounters like myself, and they all line up with a lot of the things that I've experienced, a lot of the people that I've spoken with here in the past, and
good.
Yeah, I believe you 100%.
And I believe you too, Miguel, so you're very helpful.
Well, thank you. I appreciate hearing that. And
all right, well, you have a good rest of your day, good rest of your week, and you just keep up that good work there. So
yeah, you too, and you guys be safe out there, okay?
Oh yeah, definitely we are.
All right, well.
Take care, Miguel. Catch you later, okay? And hey, you can call anytime you want. So
okay, yeah, I got your number saved, and
all right, I'll with Jeff Meldrum's and some of the others I got. So
yeah, that sounds good. All right, Justin. Well, you guys have a good day, and hopefully we talk again in the future.
Definitely. Catch you later.
Yep. Take care. Bye. Justin, it was a pleasure to have you on the show, and I was glad we were able to talk about your Bigfoot encounters and experiences. I wonder what the Bigfoot was doing in the pond, and it seems like the guy you ran into encountered the same thing. Ponds, creeks, and rivers are excellent places to find tracks, and many people claim you can find Bigfoot around waterways. Most of the places I have encountered Bigfoot were around creeks and rivers, and there always seems to be water nearby. Some researchers have called them water apes. I don't believe they are an ape or a lost primate either, but I do believe they have some of those traits in their genes. A lot of what they do seems to correlate with primate activity as far as rock throwing, wood knocking, the way they move on all fours and can stand up. A lot of them even look similar to gorillas and chimps. Of course, there is something deeper going on, and it appears that different animals from planet Earth have been bred with humans somehow, and it's a strange thing to wrap our minds around. If you guys enjoyed this episode, please be sure to follow the podcast, and if you have a Bigfoot encounter that you would like to share with me, please contact me at sasquatchtheory@outlook.com. Again, you guys can follow me on Spotify, Apple Podcast, iHeartRadio, and other outlets if you would like. Thank you everyone for tuning in today, and until the next episode, take care and be safe out there in the woods.